Right, okay, I think we shall begin. So, morning everyone. On behalf of the Transatlantic Chamber, I'm Mandy Haig and I'd like to welcome you. Thanks so much for starting your week with us, because obviously it's the week before the Easter bank holiday, so I know that everybody will be really busy. So we really do welcome you all to this fantastic event that we've got this morning, which is breakfast with the US Embassy. So Grace is here this morning as well from the Chamber, and she's going to be controlling our slides for us. And if we can move on to the next one, please, Grace, and we can explain what we're going to be doing this morning. So just to set out the agenda for you, we're going to start obviously with myself, and then I'm going to head over to Rosemary and Gus, who I'm going to introduce to you shortly. We're then going to have a question and answer session, and then we'll close the event. Now, everyone, I know we have an hour allocated this morning, but let's just make sure you get the best out of it. And once all the presentations have happened, we're going to do some questions and answers. And then we'll close the event, because, we may get some time back for you on this Monday morning. So if you can go on to the next slide for me, Grace. And I just want to remind everybody, actually, that if you do have questions, please do use the Q&A box. I will monitor the chat as best as possible, but if you put them in the Q&A box, and we'll have those later. So I thought I'd just take the opportunity really this morning to give a bit of a reminder about the Transatlantic Chamber of Commerce, because it really is a unique division of our 10 divisions at the Greater Birmingham Chamber. And it's actually a chapter of the British American Business Network, and that's the largest transatlantic networking organisation. And it promotes trade and investment between the UK and North America, and that does include obviously Canada as well. So the Greater Birmingham Transatlantic Chamber of Commerce is one of 22 offices based across the whole of the UK, the US and Canada. And it's got in total over 2,000 member companies. And these are small and medium enterprises ranging up to your really large blue chip companies as well. And it's part of a network that's committed to helping companies to connect, build business on both sides of the Atlantic. And that's why events like this are just so important for us, because it gives us the opportunity to understand what support is out there to help those of you that are tuning in from the UK to be able to go over to the States and invest out there. And I know as well this morning we've actually got some representatives from the USA on the call too, so thank you for that. And Grace, can you go on to the next one, please? And so here are some of the reasons for you to get involved with this really unique chamber, because even though we are based in the Midlands, we've got such a large reach across all of those states in America, and the Canadian chapter that's based in Toronto. So if you have any interest at all in doing business in any of the US states, then you can become a member. And so you get access to the right connections, the audiences, market intelligence, and it just provides direct interaction with business leaders throughout North America. And it's very key to the policy side too. And, there's a broad range of policy issues going on at the moment, as we're quite aware. Obviously, we have the free trade agreement that's being discussed. And we've been really active with UK government as the Transatlantic Chamber of Commerce here in the Midlands. And we've hosted some great roundtables with Department of International Trade. And we had the Right Honourable Liz Truss, who hosted one of those roundtables. And we got some of our local businesses here in the Midlands as part of that roundtable. And they were able to really put forward their concerns about the free trade agreement. So as well as the connections, as well as all of the opportunity to really understand what that US market is, you can really get a much higher profile within the UK Department of International Trade. So if we can push it forward, Grace, that'd be great. I thought it would also be useful for you today just to see some of the relevant transatlantic events that we've got going on. So on the 8th of April, this is on behalf of the US Embassy actually, and I know Gus may mention this later, but there is investment opportunities event for UK medical technology companies. So you can see all the partners there that are involved. So some really big players. So look at all the support that's on offer if you have an interest in that particular sector. And then from the 19th to the 23rd of April, we've got the UK North America Week. Now that is being hosted by Department of International Trade, and there are some really key events going on there. And after we've done this presentation to all of you that are on this call, we will send all of these details out to you. So don't worry about where you're going to locate this information. I'll send you all the PDFs over and you can get booked on. And then on behalf of the Transatlantic Chamber, we've got 42 events throughout the year. We're supporting businesses in trade training, in access to market events, DIT events. So we're just compiling the rest of the year, the dates, so we will be sending those out to you. And of course, one of our real flagship events this year will be on the 23rd of June, which is the Global Trade Conference, which the transatlantic business market does play a very significant part for that. And we will also be confirming the next date of Chapter Chat, which is in partnership with the British American Business Network. And that will be coming very soon. We've already hosted 2 really successful events with our partners, British American Business Council in Miami and also in Chicago. So thank you for that to our partners that are on the call. So Grace, if you could go over to the next slide, because here we have our stars of the event today who are going to be sharing all of the fantastic support that's on offer with our really great friends over at the US Embassy. So we have Rosemary Gallant, who is the Counsellor for Commercial Affairs at the US Embassy based in London. And just to give it a short little bit of Rosemary's bio here. So Rosemary is focused on supporting the US-UK commercial relationship, promoting investment into the US, providing information on Brexit and other issues to US firms, and helping advise the US government on bilateral trade issues. So we are delighted to have Rosemary with us this morning. And also we have Gus Franklyn-Bute, who's the Senior Regional Investment Advisor based again at the US Embassy in London. And Gus manages SelectUSA, which is a federal program established to drive economic growth and create jobs in the US. And Gus provides strategic market entry advice to companies of all sizes and from all industries, and advise US state and city economic development offices on international foreign direct investment strategies. So I would love to hand over to both Rosemary and Gus. So welcome this morning.
Great. Thank you very much, Mandy, for that introduction. And I'm so delighted that we are finally doing this. We've been trying for over a year to set up a meeting. It's great to be talking with all of you, but I really look forward to getting to Birmingham, to meeting all of you in person, to seeing some of the great companies there. I also want to cruise the canals and explore the 600 parks. I might not get to all of them. I want to take in a show at the Hippodrome, and I want to go do some retail therapy at the Bull Ring, where I understand people have been shopping for 800 years. So I'm really excited to hopefully get there later this year when circumstances allow. But I'm delighted to be meeting with you this morning with my colleague Gus, and he'll be taking you through some of the case studies, and I'll be doing the more general stuff. And I want to also thank, of course, Mandy, and also Grace, who is manning the PowerPoints, or womaning the PowerPoint, and also Stephanie Bowes and Sophie Borum, who have been so helpful in setting up today's event. So next one. Well, you've already seen us, so we can move right on. Oh. Yeah, there. And so today's presentation is organized by what, who, how, and when. And the what is a overview of the trade and investment relationship and where Birmingham's strengths fit in with the United States strengths. The who is who you should work with to pursue your opportunities with the United States. How is an overview of some of the tools from the that the U.S. Federal government provides. And when is some more details about the SelectUSA Summit, which I think Mandy's already mentioned. But I'm looking forward to talking about that with you. So next slide. I understand you've recently done a presentation with Chicago, and I'm sure everybody on the line knows that the U.S. is by far the largest consumer market in the world. It's the largest economy currently in the world, but it's also physically large. And this isn't actually the best comparison, but New York City to LA is about 4,000 kilometers. Birmingham to Cairo is about 4,000 kilometers. Birmingham to Chicago is actually about 6,000. So, but anyhow, just to give you a scope, that you knowing the United States as a market is a great thing, but you also need a regional strategy of where you're going to start with the United States. So next, please. And so starting with the more of the what is the overall trade relationship, we have $1.4 trillion invested in each other's economies. We do in 2019, we did 274 billion in trade and goods and services. We did a little bit less last year. Trade and goods was about 109 billion, which was down from 132 billion, given the pandemic and the economic recession. That's not surprising, but still a very, very strong relationship. And I mentioned that partly because Mandy rightly mentioned the free trade agreement, and I certainly would love to see that happen. But I also always remind folks that it's the US and the UK are both very open economies. We can certainly do better, but if there's an opportunity for you in the United States, there's no reason to wait for the FTA because it's a very open economy, and we think you can succeed already. The free trade agreement talks began last May. We went through 5 rounds during the year, and after November's rounds, we put them on the talks on hold, which is normal with the U.S. election and then a new administration coming in, for them to reassess priorities and decide what speed to go ahead with that. So we'll see where that lands. We certainly continue to work on improving the trade and investment relationship. And we hope that ultimately that leads to an FTA. But in the meantime, we're working closely together. So next slide. There are many statistics that draw folks into working with the United States. And I wanted to point out a few of those things that make it attractive for UK firms. One is the very large consumer market, as I've already mentioned. It's also a very strong, just like the UK, very strong academic centers and very strong intellectual property protection. So a lot of UK companies choose to do some of their R&D spending and development in the United States with that rich R&D ecosystem. It's also a good place for companies once they've established there and are want to move beyond the U.S. market. The United States has free trade agreements with 20 countries that can help them reach another 780 million possible customers. Okay, next. So that's the very broadest strokes and part of the economy. And then I think that some of the strengths of Birmingham make it particularly attractive, or Greater Birmingham. I'm just using as shorthand, and I know it's the whole region that's involved. But the wonderful blend of advanced manufacturing and emerging industries like advanced materials and energy storage, medical technologies, these are all great fits for the U.S. market. And I know also that Birmingham became England's second city based on the strong manufacturing history, but you also have a tremendously vibrant services industry, including financial services, and many of those strengths offer opportunities in the United States. Next slide. So that was looking at some of Birmingham's strengths, and I wanted to also take a quick look at some of the areas where UK firms are already invested into the United States, heavily invested in services areas, as I mentioned. Business services is the #1 for new projects recently announced. Software and IT services, financial services, communications, industrial equipment, and transportation. I think all of these are great fits with Birmingham. And I think right after this, the next slide. What I'd like to do now is hand it over to Gus for a few minutes to walk us through a couple of case studies of companies that we've worked with to provide some examples, and then I'll take the mic back after that.
Sure, thanks very much, Rosemary. Morning, everyone. So look forward to being in person again at some point. And actually, I guess looking at the first case study, which was Bravissimo, and actually this came out of a Birmingham event. The company had reached out to us in London, and it was really quite fortuitous that we were planning our event at the Clayton in Birmingham. So the CEO came along, and actually, I was thinking about this morning, and this was one of those sessions that I remember delegates and also the panelists thought that there just wasn't enough time because it was so well informed. There was tons and tons of information that came out of that. And really as a direct result, I think we were able to connect the CEO with some of the panelists that were there and who I know, some of your even board members and members, that were able to kind of help facilitate the visa, which was a major concern. How do I get my family into the US, and what's the process to making sure that I can kind of plan this out effectively. I know what the timeline is going to be. And we really worked one-on-one with the company, not just in terms of really connecting them to people that we really believed in from a service provision point of view, but also just connecting them into the state. Because one of the key early things was, especially as you're looking at effectively a bricks and mortar and an e-commerce strategy, how do you navigate not just the US, but how do you navigate New York itself, which was the intended destination. So we were really able to connect them into some of the key people within New York itself to help them to kind of identify real estate, as well as on the US side, really trying to understand the tax and the compliance side of things. So that was really critical to really helping the company to kind of get up and running. So that's a speed through of one of the case studies that we've worked with, and again coming out of the greater Birmingham region. And what I would say, we can move on to the next slide, but what I would say, which is really quite typical, it's always, I think, is always a push or a pull situation when it comes to going into the US. You're either being pushed into the market for a number of factors, and that could be, you've saturated your footprint at home or near markets, and you're really compelled strategically to be thinking about where next. And obviously Asia is one of those things, but the US is generally top on the list or high on the list when it comes to expansion. And this other case study with the fintech company, we worked with them, and I think this is a really good example. A lot of groundwork was done in advance. They had a really good idea where they wanted to go, and partly because they were already building up, they already had some US clients, but they needed to figure out, or at least a major US client. We've got some locations in mind, and I think when they came to us, a lot of it was really about validating, because we are geographically neutral. We don't really care where you go, as long as you go and you're successful. So when they came to us, it's about really trying to validate their shortlist. So we did some work with them. We did some customized reports that was kind of looked at their US strategy, what the critical issues they're trying to solve. In terms of location, it was about making sure that they were choosing a location that was a really good fit for them. So we worked with our research team in DC, and we came up with a customized report. And I think what it proved in the end, that actually the groundwork that they had done initially was pretty solid. And in fact, they ended up, based on their research and based on the information that we were able to provide, really kind of chose one of the locations they already had in the early days. But in addition to that, one of the key things they also wanted to do is, like, how do we connect in with already British companies and the British network, because one of the key things for them was, well, if we already have one or two good US-based British companies, being involved in that broader network helps us to kind of reach other potential clients. So we were able to work with the British American Council Group, the British Consulate. We reached out to a number of our networks within each of those in terms of the chosen location to be able to connect them in so they can really begin to understand and kind of begin that, I guess, business development component. And obviously we don't get involved in the business development component aspect of it, but being able to facilitate those conversations is really, we find always really critical when it comes to kind of choosing where to go in the US. The next final slide I'll talk about. This is a company, a huge company in the Northeast that came to us. And again, it's a similar approach. They were being pulled into the market. And the situation with this lifestyle brand is that they have a phenomenal online strategy. They were selling their goods online into the US. And in fact, when they came to us, the US really wasn't a higher priority as other European markets, but just the compelling offering they had meant that they needed to kind of prioritize their US expansion. But what was quite interesting with this is that as having an e-commerce strategy where they initially thought that their business was going to come from wasn't actually a priority in the end. So they had appointed a third-party logistics firm, but the demand for their products meant that they weren't able to solve and maintain a really high quality of customer expectation when it comes to orders and delivery. So they came to us again, having done some little groundwork in terms of, we know we need to be, within a certain distance from, the major highways so that we can get our delivery within a certain timeline to US customers. But what the other thing they were finding is that where their customers were, because they were somewhere else, it meant that they really had to rethink the location. So again, they came to us, they had some incentive package. Provided by a number of locations. But what they wanted to do was to really to make sure that what they were being offered was real. So what we were able to do for them is that on an anonymous basis, reach out to these economic development agencies without revealing the details of the company to validate the offering that they had in terms of incentive packages. And again, the other thing we were able to help with them with was a real estate. We know exactly what their criteria was when it comes to the footprint that they wanted and what the size of the footprint. They had a clear idea what the type of workers they wanted to get. So all the work we did behind the scenes was to make sure, in terms of choosing a location, that they were all able to kind of tick all those boxes. And ultimately it worked out. I mean, they ended up settling in one of the southeastern states, and with a $3 million, it mentioned there, $3 million capital support in terms of workforce development training, as well as tax incentives of their what's the word I'm looking for? The word I'm looking for is payroll. Sorry about that, but yeah, early morning, Monday morning. But yeah, so these are really typical examples that we see. And again, it's not always about starting right at the beginning, but after having done lots of work, working with the chamber in terms of, and the British, the British government, the DIT offices, it's then often really about validation and about connectivity. So I'll leave it there and pass back to Rosemary.
Great, thank you very much. And that I think that it fits very well. Those examples fit very well in demonstrating the tools and the programs that we have to offer. So if you could move to the next slide. And some of this has already been mentioned, but there's a variety of support out there for you as you seek to develop your US market. Of course, there's the BAB network, the British American Business that Mandy has already mentioned, and also the Department of International Trade, which has offices across the United States. The federal government, we have the SelectUSA program, as Gus and we have already mentioned, and I want to go a little bit more into some of the tools and the programs that SelectUSA provides. Also wanted to mention the state and city economic development offices. Gus referred a little bit to them. They are very active in promoting their regions, and they provide valuable services. And I think some of them may even be on the call today. We work closely with them. We partner with them, and as Gus said, we are geographically neutral. We don't care from Miami to Anchorage, whatever works for you, or Maine to Hawaii, as long as it works for you. But once you have determined where you want to be, we can help introduce you to the appropriate cities and states to start making your business happen. So next slide. So that was some of the key partners to work with. I wanted to drill down a little bit more into how do you go about developing the U.S. market, and some of these SelectUSA tools Gus has already mentioned. The website provides market research. We have a number of events that have already been highlighted, and then we can help you navigate the federal system. There's a lot of city and state regulations, and as well as financial packages and stuff too. So it is important to work at both levels once you're actually developing business. But those are the broadly what the national level program provides. So next. I'm going to drill a little bit down into more of what the online resources that are available. Gus mentioned analyzing the costs across the country. So I know another client that we worked with needed to know what the cost of labor was for different types of workers and professionals in different parts of the country. So that's a great tool. There's a very detailed trade data, and there's a cluster mapping. We'll go into more of that. There's the state incentive database. There's the states all compete heavily for your business, so we try to provide one point of access to get a look at some of the different offerings from the states. Next, please. The cluster mapping tool is one of my favorite things, because this type of information is quite expensive to access normally, and SelectUSA has worked with Harvard and a number of other organizations to pull in a lot of great information and provide it in one place, and you can analyze it by your own criteria to come up with where there's a collection of a cluster for your industry or other criteria. It might be where there's the most dairy industry for a food company. So a lot of different criteria can be inputted, and I find this a very valuable tool. The next one. And again, the cities and states compete heavily for new investments. They provide different grants, different training packages. And so we try to provide links to the most updated information that we can provide on that in one place through our SelectUSA website. And we will provide all the contacts and connections. We'll be providing this presentation to everybody who signed up for the program. So don't worry about jotting down any notes now. Concentrate on your coffee. So next slide. The final tool I just wanted to highlight is a investor guide. Gus talked about if you're further along the process, there's ways we can help you. If you're fairly early on in the process, this investor guide can be very helpful, and it provides a checklist and some broad information on things like taxes and immigration. So hopefully we have tools that are helpful at various stages of your development in your journey into the U.S. market. Next slide. So the final part of the presentation is the when, and we've mentioned it a few times, but I wanted to highlight the SelectUSA Summit. We expect to have about over 1,000 business people from around the world, from over 80 countries. This time it'll be a virtual event for the first time, so no jet lag and no hotel bills. But it's a tremendous amount of contents and contacts to really accelerate your market entry into the United States. So next slide, please. Oops, something didn't happen with this. All right, well, some of that slide got a little, didn't come through right, but let me just go through some of the things that you can get at the contents of the program. So there are sort of horizontal or issue presentations, such as information on investment rules, on shipping and logistics, on supply chain resilience, and then there are also industry spotlights on a variety of sectors, from chemicals to aerospace to advanced manufacturing, consumer goods and healthcare. And there's also connections with the EDOs and the states. Already 47 of the 50 states have committed to being there, and we expect all of them to be there. I think there's 17 governors already committed to be there. So it's really a chance to connect with the states all in one virtual place this time. The next slide. There's also a particular program for early stage tech companies and startup companies with opportunities to pitch for investment, and very tailored workshops for them, networking, one-on-one sessions, and special other informative programs for the companies that qualify for the tech program. So next, please. We tried to capture all of the different sources of information that we mentioned in this program today in one slide for you. And as I mentioned, we will give you this presentation. Hopefully it'll provide some useful information to accelerate your entry into the United States. Really looking forward to eventually getting to Birmingham and seeing some of the very interesting companies that Mandy and others have told us about. And we look forward to your questions. It's by my clock, it's 9:33. So we have plenty of time for Gus and I to answer your questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Rosemary. And we have had a number of questions come in, which is fantastic. And just to start us off, I just wanted to just go over briefly. So obviously the beauty of working with yourselves is that you've got the overall picture, haven't you, of what is on offer support-wise for businesses that are wanting to go over and invest in the States. But I suppose my question to you is, does it vary depending on sector to sector? And are there particular focuses at certain times that, you know, businesses need to be aware of to really sort of get in at a particular time? Or are there particular sectors that the US is really interested in right now that they want, you know, there is more support on offer for, say, manufacturing than there is for, you know, it's probably a very bad example, but, you know, the tech side of things?
I'll answer briefly, and if Gus has further thoughts. I think the U.S. economy is broad enough to support almost any sector. We do expect, perhaps especially with the new administration, that there's going to be a little bit more emphasis on some of the green technologies and energy efficiency, and moving to a low carbon economy. So companies with services or technologies geared toward that probably have particular opportunities. We recently did a program back in January for drones and drone technologies and services. I think that's obviously a growing interest. And fintech is one that we always have a lot of interest in, and the US and the UK are really global leaders in that. And so companies on both sides going back and forth. So I think those are a few of the hot topics. Gus, are there others that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. I think, you know, when you look at both the structure of the US economy and the US economy, they're so aligned. You know, it's almost structure itself in terms of the industrial focus. Obviously, the size differ, and in that sense, I think it really is. I would say it really is driven by the individual companies' own situation. Again, this kind of push and pull into the market. But yeah, I think spot on in terms of one of the things we're seeing certainly is the drive. And it's funny, since the new administration, there's just been a whole lot more around green technologies, energy storage, for example. Obviously, 5G is one of the key things that I think is going to come up. And I think in particularly the way the summit, I guess, the industry sectors that the summit is going to focus on, I think is very much ticking a lot of those boxes: energy storage, 5G, as I mentioned, future cities, for example. Healthcare is always there, and health tech is always a big thing, and as well as I guess applied artificial intelligence as well. But of course, if you think of any of those, sectors themselves, they often straddle many industries. As technologies, they often straddle, these emerging technologies straddles many industries and the whole supply chain as well. So I would say that it's open to all. But I think the way I'm looking at it, and I think it's very much aligned with the sort of inquiries we're seeing, the ones that Rosemary and I just mentioned are the ones we're seeing more and more interest in. And if you think about it, it's really also where the UK, and the devolved regions have strength. So I hope that answers that.
Thanks, Gus. That's great. We've had a question come in from Stuart from LLC Digital, and it's always quite interesting, actually, because I know that when we think about exporting, as an example, or investment, it's a lot of it is geared around manufacturing, but because Birmingham and the greater Birmingham region has got such a big service sector as well. And Stuart's question is about a company that wants to expand in digital services, so without physical products, again, to actually expand with. So are there any restrictions that we need to be aware of for digital services? And supply companies that are co-branded but hold offices in both countries? So I guess that's quite a complex question, and quite detailed there. But I suppose the support is out there to help businesses such as those to be able to manoeuvre and navigate within the States to do the right thing with, people like yourselves at SelectUSA, I guess.
Yeah, I would say just broadly, the trade in service or digital goods is huge. I don't know what the number is, but I remember talking to one of the major companies recently, and their company alone was talking billions in transatlantic digital trade. So it's certainly a huge area. In broadly, the UK probably has more restrictions because of GDPR and things on data flows than the US. The US has them in some areas, particularly in health information, which is highly protected. But in general, the US rules are looser. So if you're already meeting the UK privacy and data transfer and other rules, you're probably going to be fine with the US. But yes, obviously you want to double check on the details of that. We have some of that information, and I'm sure their partners and your network also can provide details on that. But in general, it's a really thriving area.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the expert, and I think that some of the tax guys on the call might be able to help. But I think certainly when it comes to digital services, because I don't believe there's obviously a federal digital services tax. I think the issue then comes down on a state-by-state basis, because obviously each state has its own tax and business regime. So I think it's about making sure that you understand that and navigate that. And again, if there is a need, I'm sure that our team in DC can help if we need to kind of provide some sort of summary in terms of where it's at right now. But I think when it comes to digital services right now, the tax is always an issue, and as the GDPR is always an issue where data is stored, for example. There can be variations from state by state. But again, I'm not an expert, but I think that's a general kind of things that we often see, problems we often see companies trying to solve.
Thank you. David Green, who is one of our Transatlantic committee members, has asked if the US Embassy has thought about setting up some kind of attaché in Birmingham or further afield from London. And of course, being on an event which has been hosted by the Greater Birmingham region, you probably feel this a lot, that it's about, you know, the rest of the UK as well. And we've also got Alan on the call here from Scotland's British American Business Council chapter, so welcome to Alan. So have there been any thoughts about it, or is it more about, once we're through the pandemic, getting out there and getting to meet, as I know you are so keen to do?
I think it's the latter. We will be getting out, and especially with the UK's strong focus on leveling up and making sure that there isn't just the focus on the London region, that the economic opportunities, and it's the same in the United States. We're working hard to represent companies from Wyoming and South Dakota as much as we touch base with the DC and New York crowd. So I don't expect us to be opening up any other operations. Of course, you mentioned we do have a consulate in Scotland, so we do have great representation up there. I don't see us opening anything else, but we will work harder. We will work hard to get out to meet you in person once we can.
Well, we're certainly going to keep you to that, that's for sure. Just to go back to the support that's on offer then. So we're going to share all of this information afterwards to make sure. I mean, what a great opportunity. There's yourselves here at the US Embassy, as you also validated, the great British American Business Council with the 22 chapters, of which we're one, and I am very grateful to be the vice president of that organisation. So what, you know, massive connections there across the States. And of course, Department of International Trade as well. And connecting is so important. It's been challenging, but there's also been opportunities as well, haven't there, over this last year? So how do you see this developing now, where travel corridors, you know, and I had a couple of questions last week actually from businesses that they're really keen to get out into the States and get to feel it and be in the market and go and see their customers. I mean, have you got any insight? I know we haven't got a crystal ball with, you know, what is actually happening with the pandemic itself, but what are your feelings on the restrictions that are currently in place with travel? And, you know, when I went and asked some questions about, could a business in particular, they wanted to get over there and actually physically face-to-face interview the staff that they wanted to set up their establishment, and it wasn't seen as something integral, so they wouldn't be able to go. What are your thoughts on how we're going to open up, and will those restrictions start to diminish?
So I knew this would certainly come up, and not unexpected.
Sorry, it's me to ask it, but I've been asked it a couple of times last week.
Of course. You know, we have a lot of contact and a lot of discussions are going on. Obviously, not most of it is not public, so there may be a sense that it's a status quo. And but I know within the U.S. Interagency discussions are going on. How do we have a risk-based approach to reopening the borders for this really critical travel itself? Just from the loss of the UK visitors to the US, that's a $15.5 billion loss to our economy, and that's just their travel. Well, they're going there. Of course, some are going there to go to Disney World and have at it, but many are going to establish businesses, as you mentioned, to create investments and projects. So there's this follow-on of business that doesn't happen, and we've all adjusted as much as we could to do as much as we can online. But I know, especially for new business, this face-to-face and boots on the ground and actually walking a site before you sign a lease and things like that is just critical. So I just want to assure you that we're working hard. I know I'm in this, I'll be just a fly on the wall, but we'll be talking to the civil aviation people this week in the UK. There are a lot of talks going on to try to work out whether it's the vaccine passports or all the different tools that could be used, but how exactly and when that's going to break through, I can't really speculate, but I just want to assure you that we know it's really important. That I know personally, and that's just one person's view of a number of different efforts, both on the U.S. side, as I said, to develop a better risk-based approach. So, yeah, that's sort of all I can offer. I'm hoping that it's soon, and maybe that given the wonderful success of the vaccine program here, perhaps the UK can be broken out of the pack, but that'll be a decision at a much higher rank than mine. So.
No problem, Rosemary. Thank you for sharing that. And just to go through a couple of the other questions that we've had on, I mean, John Mortimer has actually asked about when the embassy will be open for visa applications. So that's certainly in connection with that.
Maybe
and
just
then
one more thing on the visas. I mean, they are doing some. I mean, it's very, very narrow window that it has to meet, but they are doing some, and they are doing some for business. So if there's a critical business need, please have them talk to me and Gus, reach out to the consular section, and we can at least see whether there's any chance.
Yeah, sure. I suppose it's about assessing that need, isn't it, really? And just to make sure that you're not making any firm plans beforehand, and make sure you do get that confirmation before you step out and book those seats on that plane. So I suppose that thinking about some of the support that's on offer once people have decided that the US is the place for them to start to establish and invest now. And you did mention, Gus, earlier about the incentive packages, which always go down really well with business to help with that support along the way. I mean, does that tend to sort of have a changing between sector to sector or state to state, or does it depend on the actual business model itself?
Yeah, and actually, I think ultimately it varies between from certainly by sector and of course by state. So I think ordinarily, at least the basic standard is that when states evaluate incentive packages, it's always related to workforce, right? Particularly workforce creation. So for example, if the plan that's presented is often not even the initial plan, is often the longer term plan. If the 5-year plan is about going here, and you can present a real valid case as to the potential success for this business in the state tend to look at it on that basis. And often you would find that they might roll out incentive packages once you hit certain criteria over a period of time, right? But I think in terms of determining, I would say if they had 5 things that the company needed to decide on in terms of where it's going to go, incentives, and I think it's the same the world over, incentives net very rarely tends to be at the very top of the list, right? Because it's always around the business case. So incentive might be number 3 or number 4. It's never the last, but it's always and it's often the icing on the cake. And it does vary ultimately. It does vary from state to state. But I think one of the interesting thing is that, so states would generally publish their standard, incentives, because that's designed and determined, within, the high level, the cabinet level, or whatever else within a particular state. But often you find just moving across county lines, and this is kind of when the conversation happens, I guess, when you're talking to a particular state, when you start thinking and you start drilling down, by just even sometimes relocating the business across a county line can have a major ramification in terms of what an incentive package looks like. Again, if you think about it, it is an economic decision. And states, like everywhere else, have a responsibility to ensure that their populace and their kind of local economy is being really well supported. So I think it does vary, absolutely. But then on the other thing I would say, I mean, beyond the state incentives, is depending on if you are in an industry where there is federal interest, for example, there is a federal initiative, there are often support that's available, not often in cash, but sometimes it's about, co-investing or co-supporting for grants, etc. So there are opportunities, and I think it really does come down to really thinking about what the sector you're in. And again, we're more than happy to flag up any sort of federal, or point people to the direction where there is a federal, we can interrogate whatever federal support that's there. Again, there's tools and online support that's available. So I'm more than happy to share that across if that's of interest.
That's great. And I think many of the comments in the chat and also of the questions is about, it's great that people have come on this call this morning and they've got to meet you now. And we now know of all of the support that you have on offer. So we will make sure that we're going to share all that. And the contents are the contacts are at the end of the presentation, aren't they? So we've had a comment from Andy Dawson, who is from Curium, and he's one of our transatlantic members actually, and he's asking about the right approach and to discuss that with somebody. So happily, Andy, we'll put you in touch afterwards and make sure you're getting the right support there. So final thoughts then, really. I mean, we're just coming up to the end, and yeah, we are nearly at the hour. I haven't had any more questions come through in the Q&A box. So Alan, we will share who the speakers are, I guess, at the summit as soon as you have those for June. Yeah, excellent. And yeah, visa questions, we will make sure that we get you the connections out there so that you know who to get in touch with. So final thoughts from both of you then, really, on the support that you have on offer, and maybe a message for us Midlands businesses.
Well, thank you for organizing this. You really had you could tell by the questions and by the attendance list, you've got a lot of great, serious companies with some good potential, and we want to see it happen. And I know that we'll be doing some follow-up counseling sessions one-on-one with that you can primarily with Gus on very specific opportunities and approaches for business. I'll get out there as soon as I can, and we're lucky to have Gus. We don't have a SelectUSA person. It's only the few of the markets that have a full-time person on investment. So we're just lucky to have that role here and that resource. So let's make use of him. Keep him working hard as he does, and look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo Rosemary's, I mean, I always enjoy coming to the Midlands. Don't tell Alan that. I enjoy going to Scotland as well. No, but yeah, I mean, but it has been a while. We've not really, we've obviously come up for the major events you've had, your big annual conference, etc. But in terms of really us convening again, I think it's a really good opportunity. And I think I think it's quite clear. You'll see that even when it comes to the summit, etc. We're working really closely with DIT. We're working closely with the BAB network. So I think there is a genuine commitment to kind of make sure that we kind of join hands. We're not, we're all in the same boat effectively. But I do also feel that what do they say? The more noise you make is the more attention you get. So that would be my piece of advice to companies in the greater Birmingham region, is to make noise. The more your noise is the more that we're there to help you. So,
well, that's a great segue into the support that the Transatlantic Chamber can offer, and certainly with the connections and increasing profile. So if you're on the call and you're not a member of us and you want to join this fantastic unique chamber, which is part of those 22 chapters across North America, then please do get in touch afterwards. And yeah, we will share all of the slides, all of the contact details. And you know what, thank you so much again for your time this morning, Gus and Rosemary, because we have got a great relationship and we know how much you love the Midlands, and we are so looking forward to hosting you and to taking you to visit some of these businesses later in the year when it's all safe for us to do so. So I think on that note, we will give you back 5 minutes of your day, everybody, and we will share this on our YouTube channels so that you can have a good look at that and really digest the information that's been shared. So on behalf of the Transatlantic Chamber of Commerce and the US Embassy, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, David. Custard Factory. Here we go. Take care, everyone.